I've been thinking about Dark Sun Gwyndolin quite a lot since my last FromSoft-related video. So, naturally, I've decided to dedicate an entire video to her. And yes, I said her. This is my video, so I've decided I get to decide what pronouns to use. You're just gonna have to deal with she, they, Gwyndolin. If that's a deal breaker, then I don't know what to tell you, man, other than I am not sorry. Before we dive too deep into the mess that is untangling Gwyndolin's gender and my thoughts on it, though, I wanted to take a look at just who they are. Obviously, they are the god of the dark moon, last-born child of Gwyn, lord of sunlight. We've known that much since they first appeared in the very first game, the last god to remain in Anor Londo, guarding their father's tomb and his secrets. I'm torn on whether this was something she actually wanted to do, or an effort to stay close to her father. Gwyn seems to have scorned her at every possible turn. There are no statues commemorating her in the capital. Her entire existence is mired in illusions and secrecy. Even the place where you can join her covenant is hidden from all but those in the know. Yet she waits in his literal tomb to defend it from anyone who would deign to enter. Anor Londo is desolate. Gwyndolin is one of the last living beings within its walls. She could have fled with the other gods, but yet she stays in a dead city to protect an empty tomb, and fulfill the plans of a man who, from what we can tell, never gave her the care a father should. That doesn't exactly give me a hopeful outlook about her mental health. In fact, it seems a lot like a child continuing to act on the patterns instilled in them by an abusive parent. In general, I resent the idea that just because someone is powerful, nothing they do can have anything to do with any childhood trauma they might have experienced. As if the fact that Gwyndolin is one of, if not the, most powerful gods around, means they can't be affected by the fact that their father is the kind of man who puts up statues of two of his kids, while the other two either get left behind at the ends of the earth to be forgotten about, or quietly shunted to the side and ignored. And then, let's not forget, smashes all the statues of his oldest child and only heir to pieces and completely erases him from all records after a major falling out. Speaking of those siblings, though, she has 4 that we know of. The Nameless King, Gwyn's firstborn, a war god who eventually allied himself with the dragons and got himself scrubbed from the annals for this crime. Guinevere, Gwyn's second child and first daughter, the much-adored Sun Princess. After her flight from Anor Londo and her marriage to the flame god Flann, Gwyndolin creates an illusion of her in the city to keep a better hold of the reins. And Filianor, Gwyn's mysterious youngest daughter. Long ago, Gwyn gave her to the Pygmies as a thanks for their aid in the fight against the everlasting dragons, and promised to someday come back for her.
So that was a fucking lie.
He never returned, and she died there in the ringed city, decaying to a husk in her church. Many people have already complained that her existence contradicts the lore we already have about Gwyndolin being Gwyn's last child. But the small envoy banner only says Filianor is his youngest daughter, so I think there's enough wiggle room there. Because the games don't, and never have, considered Gwyndolin a true daughter of Gwyn, and yes, I will be coming back to that. Now, looking at Gwyndolin beside her siblings, the first thing you might notice is that she looks weird. She has snakes for legs. The Nameless King, Guinevere, and Filianor are all entirely humanoid in shape. Granted, the Nameless King is looking a little worse for wear, but the shape is still correct. You might also notice that I've only named 3 siblings yet. That would be because I think the last one holds the key to what makes Gwyndolin different from their other siblings. Yorshka, the captain of the Darkmoon Knights after Gwyndolin grows too sick to lead them. She is a dragon crossbreed, who refers to Gwyndolin as her older brother. Unlike with Filianor, there is no room for speculation here. She specifically says Gwyndolin is older than her, which would clash with the previous understanding that they are Gwyn's last born. Unless the two of them don't share a father, but a mother instead. While Yorshka does refer to Father Gwyn and Sister Guinevere, it's in ways that seem more ceremonial than literal, especially considering she's damn near quoting Gwyndolin from the first game.
Thou hast journeyed far. Hear my voice. If thou shalt swear by the covenant to become a shadow of Father Gwyn and Sister Guinevere, a blade that shall hunt the foes of our lords, then I shalt protect thee, safeguarding thy person with the power of the dark moon.
Thou'st journeyed far. Hear my voice. If thou shalt swear by the covenant to become a shadow of Father Gwyn and Sister Guinevere, a blade that shall hunt the foes of our lords, then I place thee under the aegis and the power of the dark moon.
The only thing that throws a bit of a wrench in the works for this is the line where she says,
Long ago, our father Gwyn, lamenting the waning of the fire, became cinder of his own will. Now, the fire is linked by the champions who have come in his stead. Such is the will of Father and the gods.
Separating Gwyn from the rest of the gods. Though given that she has taken over her older siblings' duties as captain of the Darkmoon Knights, and has already been seen to quote them, it's possible she is still quoting them here rather than speaking of her own accord. Further strengthening this idea is the fact that Gwyndolin was the one who gave Yorshka her name, implying to me at least that she was hidden away and neglected for much of her life. We already have a record for how this world views dragon crossbreeds in Priscilla from the first game. She is feared as an abomination by the gods and locked away in the painted world of Ariamis. It's not so far-fetched to think, then, that another such girl would be treated much the same, and find kindness only in someone who is, perhaps, a little bit like her. Whether they're half-siblings or Gwyndolin adopted Yorshka as their sister doesn't matter much after that. Yes, I am suggesting that Gwyndolin is a dragon crossbreed. This only becomes more plausible when we take into account that Gwyndolin, seemingly, has a close tie to Priscilla too, as evidenced by their ultimate fate. Gwyndolin doesn't die in Dark Souls 1, but she falls grievously ill at some point after it. She retreats to try and recoup her strength, leaving the Darkmoon Knights under Yorshka's watch, but unfortunately ends up as prey to Aldrich, Saint of the Deep. In the game, the player arrives just in time to witness Gwyndolin being actively devoured by him. What's truly interesting, though, is one of the items we can get from Aldrich's soul. The Life Hunt Scythe miracle. Now, where have I heard that one before? Oh right, it's Priscilla's boss weapon from Dark Souls 1. And what does the description say? Aldrich dreamt as he slowly devoured the god of the Dark Moon. In this dream, he perceived the form of a young, pale girl in hiding. Now, that could be Yorshka, or it could be the painting girl in the painted world of Ariandel, but considering it's on the Life Hunt Scythe, I don't think it's a stretch to imagine that it could also very well be Priscilla. What's most notable, regardless, is that all of these women are pale, white-haired dragon crossbreeds, just like Gwyndolin. Yes, even the painting girl. If you look closely at her, you can tell that she has scales. Which leads us to the main and thorniest topic of this video, suggesting that a video game character might in some way be queer. When it comes to Gwyndolyn's gender, there are two entirely separate things to talk about. My own theories and how I choose to interpret the lore that we have on them, and the truly ugly side of the fandom that has never given them the respect they deserve due to transphobia and trans fetishism. For the sake of my own sanity, I'm going to start with the theories. One of the theories I've heard a lot is that Gwyndolin is a trans woman. They were assigned male at birth, and raised as a daughter, so they're a trans woman. End of story, goodbye. I can see where that argument is coming from, and if that's the headcanon you want to go for, then be my guest. I also understand any trepidation that might exist in questioning this, because usually the people who do are the ones loudly screaming that Gwyndolin can't possibly be anything but a cis man despite the everything. But I would still like to look a little closer at everything and see what alternate readings might appear. We know she was raised as a girl because of her strong affinity for the moon, which in this world is considered a feminine trait. That seems like an odd choice if your kid really was just an effeminate boy. Unless Gwyn was, like, extremely bioessentialist, and chose to do a switcheroo on his kid's gender instead of trying to suppress their feminine side, which is what most queerphobic parents would actually do. Now, as for their gender and sex, the only thing we really know is that they were not assigned female at birth. The assumption most people make upon hearing that is that they must then have been assigned male at birth instead. That's not actually a given, though, and it's where my own theories on Gwyndolyn's gender really begin to take shape. I think that Gwyndolin is intersex. I think, like most intersex children, when she was born, Gwyn picked a gender for her and raised her as such. A daughter. It's better for her to be a daughter, he thinks, deformed as she is. In a patriarchal society like Anor Londo, that will keep her from ever rising to the throne. When they grew a bit older and started developing more masculine traits, they're given the reversal ring, an item which causes males to perform female actions and vice versa. Which is just another bit of lovely bioessentialism. What exactly is a female action? What makes it different from a male action? Answer me that, Mr. Souls. Functionally, this ring just makes the male character model do the female model's animations and vice versa. I was expecting something like the coffin of trans your gender from Dark Souls 2, but that's literally all this thing does. Not exactly the magic HRT ring I was expecting. So, in essence, her appearance in Dark Souls 1 is truly her own work. She may have had the reversal ring at the time, but given what we can see of its effects on our own characters, it would be functionally useless in terms of aesthetics. In the wake of the other gods fleeing Anor Londo, Gwyndolin weaves an illusion of her sister to act in her stead, believing herself to be too disgusting to openly hold power. Obviously, in the literal text of the game, this is about the snake legs. But in an allegorical sense, while it could certainly be about gender dysphoria, it's also extremely common for intersex kids to be taught to hate their bodies. As for picking her gender for her before she was old enough to have a say, yes, Gwyn may have gotten it right. Gwyndolin easily could be perfectly happy with that. They might also not be, and the freedom to determine their gender should ultimately have been theirs, not anyone else's. It's a fairly strong analogy to the experience of a lot of intersex kids, unfortunately. Despite the fact that it is deeply unethical and people have increasingly been voicing their concerns, a lot of doctors will still suggest that literal infants go through corrective surgery if they're found to be intersex when they're born. The vast majority of these surgeries are not medically necessary and can lead to lifelong issues. It's also, again, extremely unethical, given these surgeries are usually performed on children below the age of 2 who cannot give informed consent, and it risks things like medically assigning the wrong sex to a child who doesn't have a grasp of their gender yet. Beyond that, the kind of surgeries in question here only make it worse. The removal of gonads is essentially sterilization without the patient's consent and will require lifelong hormone replacement therapy. Any surgery trying to change the shape of a child's genitals risks incontinence, scarring, lack of sensation, and psychological trauma. These surgeries are not reversible, and as I already said, the kids in question are way too young to consent to them. Luckily for Gwyndolin, though, nothing quite so drastic was done to her, as far as we know. In Dark Souls 1, I find it notable that Gwyndolin is never referred to as Gwyn's son. Only in Dark Souls 3 are they referred to as Gwyn's youngest son. True, they're called by he/him pronouns in both English translations, but Dark Souls 1 is careful to only ever call them by gender-neutral terms where their relationship to Gwyn is concerned. This fits depressingly well with her ultimate fate, stripped of all right to self-determination and slowly devoured by a thing that was once a man. However, there could be another layer here. By the time of Dark Souls 3, Allfather Lloyd, Gwyn's uncle who took the throne after Gwyn went to Link the Fire, is widely viewed as a fraud. Now, why might that be? Because if Gwyn had a second son, then Lloyd's claim to the throne would be illegitimate. In that sense, at least publicly, it serves Gwyndolin to be viewed as Gwyn's son. In fact, in the Japanese text, they are apparently referred to as chief among the gods, suggesting they have actually succeeded their father. Perhaps it was their choice, after all, to cast aside the sullen, brooding goddess. At least in public. At the end of the day, it's probably unsurprising to hear that I think it's likely they're at least woman-adjacent in how they identify behind closed doors. After all, when we saw Gwyndolin at the height of her power, she was definitely presenting as female. Additionally, it is obvious she is struggling against Aldrich even as he consumes her. And what do we see in Aldrich's shape? The remains of Nito fashioned into a skirt. Into their lost, even as they are literally being eaten alive, Gwyndolin remains female-presenting. Obviously, my reading is not the be-all end-all of this. There are so many layers of potential here, and as long as it's handled respectfully, I am so here for exploring them. Which brings me around to the people who did not treat her gender with any respect. Her creators. Do I think it was the intention of the creators to write an ipso-gender woman, a genderqueer person, or a trans woman? Or perhaps even an intersex trans man? No. Not in the slightest. The boy raised as a girl is a trope a lot of cis authors tend to fall into when they're first dipping their toes into writing a feminine man. As if a man needs the excuse of coercive parents to like dresses and long hair. In fact, most men who like those things have coercive parents to blame for the fact that it took them years to explore their gender presentation. But some men can't look beyond their own societally approved masculinity box for long enough to realize femininity is not a curse, nor is it weakness, and some men might be perfectly happy to wear dresses and paint their nails. Gwyndolin, as written, is not a trans woman, or intersex, or genderqueer. They are the crystallization of all of the transphobia of the early 2010s and the deep and abiding misunderstandings around what it means to be anything other than cis. And the community ate it up. Messages like "amazing trap ahead" litter the room before Gwyndolin's boss fight. The same people who look at them and laugh will turn around and jerk it to them the next second. Their mockery serves as a comfort to them, to distance themselves from the fact that, had she not been written as she was, she would be one of their precious Dark Souls waifus. The Dark Souls community is rank with transphobia, especially transmisogyny. It's disgusting and disheartening, though not exactly surprising. Dark Souls came out in 2011. The "it's a trap" meme was still alive and well, and Gwyndolin, unfortunately, fit too perfectly into all of that mess to go ignored. To this day, people still refer to her as a trap. The joke, for all that it was never funny, and has at this point been so run into the ground as to just be pathetic, is still around. It might have died down a little, but look around for Gwyndolin content for any length of time, and I guarantee you will see it. If you somehow don't know why calling trans women, or any trans person really, but let's be real, trans women are the main target of this, traps, I have 3 words for you. Trans panic defense. This is an actual legal defense, defined by the LGBT bar as a legal strategy which asks a jury to find that a victim's gender identity is to blame for the defendant's violent reaction, including murder. Another version is the gay panic defense, which, yes, is exactly what it sounds like. They're usually talked about together as the LGBTQ+ panic defense these days. Despite the fact that this sounds absolutely ludicrous, only 17 states in the US have banned it, and the list of countries worldwide who have done the same is depressingly short. Calling a trans person a trap furthers the idea that there is something inherently deceptive about our existence, and makes it easier for the people who murder us to argue that they did so in a panic. Like they were a poor cornered animal lashing out after being caught in a snare, instead of a human being who looked at another human being and found enough hate in their heart to kill them. It's something I really don't like thinking about for too long, because if I do, I will legitimately have a breakdown, but in short, transphobia is still flourishing, and the Dark Souls community is still toxic. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, consider liking it and maybe subscribing. I will be back here Thursday after next. Bye.